Academy High School, and all of you folks for coming out and spending some time to learn about your candidates that are running for Congress. I'm State Senator Frank Antonori. 4 years ago, many of you in this room elected me to the Arizona legislature to go up there and get a job done. And that job was to get this state back in sound financial shape. We had a huge budget deficit. We were facing a lot of problems with our economy. And we went up there and in a short period of time, we were able to reduce that deficit, balance the budget, and create jobs. Arizona is now 7th in the country for job growth. And just this last month, as you saw, we created 32,000 new jobs. I want to take that experience and that skill to Washington, D.C. and deliver those same results for you in Washington. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Antonori. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you all for being here tonight, and I'd like to send our thoughts and prayers out to John Justice, who's not here because he's having a heart problem. He's in the hospital right now, so let's all say a prayer for him, and look forward to sharing ideas tonight and talking about the positive way forward we can go as a country. We can lower taxes, we can get jobs back, we can lower gas prices, and don't listen to anybody who tells you we can't. We're Americans, we can do anything we want. Thank you, I look forward to it.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. McSally, your introduction, please.
Thank you. I'm Martha McSally, and for those that don't know me, I'm a retired Air Force colonel and fighter pilot. I'm an Air Force Academy distinguished graduate with 2 master's degrees, one from Harvard and Air War College. Served my country for 26 years in uniform. I also worked for Senator Kyle for a year as a legislative fellow, so I saw up close and personal how to get things done in Washington, D.C. Later on, I took on the Pentagon for making our U.S. servicewomen wear Muslim garb when on base in Saudi Arabia. Put my career on the line for that, but my oath of office is to the Constitution of the United States, and I take that very seriously. I used what I learned as a legislative fellow, and I actually got legislation written and passed in the House and the Senate and signed into law to overturn that unconstitutional policy. I am ready to fight for you. I'm ready to fight for Arizona. I've served my country. I've put my life on the line. I've put my career on the line. I got a fire in my belly to make a difference, and that's why I'm here today. I look forward for our discussion tonight on the key issues, the complex issues that are facing our country.
Thank you, Ms. McSally. Mr. Sitton.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be with you tonight. My name is Dave Sitton. I've been in this community for nearly 4 decades. I came here to play baseball at the University of Arizona back in 1974 and knew then Los Angeles was not going in the right direction. I've been in this community in a variety of ways. I've had a business background for those 38 years. I've been in coaching at the University of Arizona, and also I've had a broadcast career. And all that time I've been involved with everything in this community, from military affairs to healthcare to sports and tourism and even the fine arts. I've had a wonderful time representing so many different facets of this community. I want to take it to Washington, D.C., where 250 small businesses in this community have said yes to my candidacy, and I will be your citizen legislator.
Thank you, Mr. Sitton. Again, questions tonight will be in the categories of foreign policy, immigration, education, the economy, and current events. So without further ado, Mr. Massengill, will you please ask the first question?
Thank you, Mr. Pina. Our first question tonight focuses on the issue of economics. This first question is for Mr. Antonori. Mr. Antonori, if elected, would you sponsor a balanced budget amendment?
Well, yes. Arizona has a requirement to balance the budget. It is something that I think, had the federal government had a balanced budget amendment, we wouldn't have the deficit and the debt that we've incurred over the past few decades, and particularly over the last few years. That balanced budget amendment in Arizona requires the legislature to control spending and to keep government in check and to keep government at a manageable level. If you do not have a check and balance on government, sooner or later there will be people elected that will spend money beyond the means of the taxpayers to support that government, and that government gets bureaucratic and obtrusive and out of control. And I think a balanced budget will do a lot to get spending under control and stop this current Congress and the President from stealing the future of our kids and our grandkids by borrowing so much money. A lot of people try to call us radical on the Republican side, but I think borrowing $50,000 a second is pretty radical, and that's what this President and this Congress are doing now, and I'm going to put a stop to that.
Thank you, Mr. Antonori. Mr. Kelly, your rebuttal, please.
I would support a balanced budget amendment if it included spending caps. Because if we just passed a balanced budget amendment without spending caps, we've all seen what this Washington would do. They would still spend us into oblivion because they've never proved they can manage taxpayer dollars properly. And after that, they just raise taxes on all of us. So if it included spending caps, yes, I would absolutely support a balanced budget amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. McSally.
Our debt is out of control, and we are handing you all a bill, and I'm so excited that you're engaged and interested in this because it is a national security issue. We've got to do a number of things in order to address it. We've got to show some fiscal discipline in order to actually cut our yearly spending. We also need to provide caps to that spending. In addition to that, for the long term, we have to pass a balanced budget amendment. It's the only way to ensure that discipline into the future. Absolutely support it.
Thank you, Ms. McSally. Mr. Sitton, your rebuttal.
Like our others up here, I do support a balanced budget amendment. Government of the people, by the people. With a government that can't balance its budget, why would anybody else? These United States cannot afford the amount of debt being placed on future generations by our out-of-control spending. We have to rein in the budget process. One of the ways to do it is a balanced budget amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Sitton.
Thank you. Our second question is directed at Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, if elected, how would you support a shift to higher skilled jobs in America?
I'm sorry, steel jobs in America?
Sorry, higher skilled jobs in America.
Well, the only way to do that is to remove the government barriers within taxation and regulation and get them out of the way. Sadly, one of our biggest exports right now is jobs. We're exporting them to China. And the reason we're doing so is because we've let radical environmentalism instead of common sense take over our government. We can lower the corporate tax rate. We currently have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. We can lower at the tax rate for everybody across the board. Those top rates are affecting small businesses. We can get the EPA out of our way and out of our lives so we can start once again making things right here in the United States of America instead of buying them all from China.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. McSally.
Thank you. I just came from being a professor at the Marshall Center, teaching government officials how to transition to democracy and to prosperity. And one of the things we tell them is education is that road to prosperity. So we have got to make sure that we've got the best education in the world so that our students are ready to have those high-paying jobs. We also need to get the federal government off the backs of businesses and not have such high taxes and complex tax codes so that we have incentives for companies to come to America and stay in America to keep those workers here at the highest level of skill.
Thank you, Ms. McSally. Mr. Sitton.
We need to return our economy to that of ferocity when it comes to research and development, and I agree, education is one of the principles that will move more skilled jobs back into our economy. We need to meet and create demand for the world for our products. Products that Steve Jobs did not need any type of government help.
Thank you, Mr. Sitton. Mr. Antonori, your rebuttal.
Well, you've got to do some of the things that we've done here in Arizona. We lower the capital gains in Arizona. We protected intellectual property rights. We allow companies to invest and do R&D without having to worry about being taxed because we provide an R&D tax credit. When you incentivize research, you bring those companies that do a lot of research. Biotech industries, we have Intel, Sanofi, and all these great companies that come here because of that advantage. And we have to do that for the entire country, bring those companies here and give them the incentive to come here for those high-paying jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Antonori.
Our next question is for Ms. McSally. Ms. McSally, with a rise in the national deficit, what budget cuts would you support?
I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing. What kind of cuts?
With the rise in the national deficit, what budget cuts would you support?
As you all know, and I mentioned already, our debt is out of control. This is a national security issue. It's a freedom of action issue around the world, and it's a prosperity issue. So we have got to make sure that every dollar of taxpayers' money is spent on something that the federal government is responsible for, and we stop having no fiscal discipline and this runaway spending. We've got to look at the whole pie chart of how we're spending money. So everything, if you look at it, everything from strengthening and protecting Social Security and Medicare for the future, making sure that we have a good defense, but we have efficiencies in defense, and then looking hard at that discretionary spending that's not defense and making those cuts, because if the federal government isn't supposed to do it by the Constitution, it belongs with the states or it belongs with individuals. So we need to have that discipline to look at everything and make sure that we are spending your taxpayers' dollars on just the things the federal government is responsible for. We need people with the education and the experience there in order to solve this complex problem.
Thank you, Ms. McSally. Mr. Sitton, your rebuttal.
Over the years, I've had the pleasure and privilege of knowing several of our elected federal officials, and to every one of them, there was concern just about how much waste, fraud, and abuse occurred in Washington, D.C. in their spending. The Office of Management and Budget